Okay. So I want to welcome everybody to Mudflat Press's first Lit Chat. And we're kicking it off with Alec Clayton reading from and talking about and with you all about his latest novel, Locked In. And that's all I'm going to say. I'm going to let him get started. But just so you know, he's going to start with reading from the book and then talking about it. So
great.
There you go, Alec.
Okay. Yeah, I was in the joint because the Jones County Sheriff's deputy stopped me for speeding on a country road near Ellisville in the so-called free state of Jones, where I had lived my whole dang messed up life from birth to when a tiny stash of grass landed me behind bars. Ellisville is where Newton Knight, the Robin Hood of the South, lived and fought his battles against the Confederate Army. Nobody knows the truth of what he did and didn't do, and how large his army was, or whether or not Jones County really did secede from the Confederacy to become the free state of Jones. People in Jones County still argue about it today. They can't let go of the Civil War.
Yeah.
I was hardly speeding, 45 on a 30-mile-per-hour road. I was a horny, lonely, angry 26-year-old, a recent graduate with a master's in social work from the University of Southern Mississippi. Unemployed, anxious to get out of Mississippi, but with not the foggiest idea where I wanted to go or what to do with my life. It was late at night. I had been on a date with Amanda Ramsey, a girl I had known since first grade. We had been to see Blue Velvet at the Beverly Drive-In, and I was turned on from seeing Isabella Rossellini naked. Oh, Lordy, she looked haunted and fearful, and it was as creepy a movie as I'd ever seen. But despite all that, she looked incredibly sexy in that scene. Besides which, I was so horny all the time back then, I could get turned on by mannequins in store windows. Amanda and I parked on the side of a secluded road and did some grass and climbed into the back seat and did some heavy petting. But she stopped me before we went all the way. She said, "Stop," and I stopped. Later, I had just dropped her off and was heading home. The road was dark and curvy, maybe not a safe road, but I knew it so well I could drive it blindfolded. I had a missing tailgate on my '63 Chevy. The old car was pretty much held together with bent coat hanger wires and chewing gum. I didn't know I had a missing tail light. License and registration, the deputy demanded, speaking around a wad of chewing tobacco in a slow and slurry tone, while leaning against the driver's side window and shining his flashlight in the car. I hitched my butt up and reached in my hip pocket to dig out my wallet for my license, and then I reached to the glove compartment to pull out my registration papers. The deputy aimed his light at the open compartment. "What's that?" he demanded. What? I knew I was in big freaking trouble. "That little purple pouch in there, what's in it?" "Oh, Tylenol. I get headaches. I always keep a few." "Hand it over." It's just aspirin. Tylenol. I promise. "Step out of the car, son." I was a goner and I knew it. He opened the door and held it open for me to get out. He patted me down, finding nothing but some change. He spit tobacco juice into the dirt on the side of the road and then walked around the car to open the passenger side door. His flashlight stabbing the muddy field to the right and a forest of pine trees in the distance. like I was some desperado and he was checking to make sure I didn't have an accomplice sneaking up on him. And then back to the glove compartment, fishing around with the beam of his flashlight, which came to rest on that purple felt bag with the lever drawstring. A girl I had dated a few times gave it to me. There was another big bag inside the bag, a plastic baggie holding a bit of marijuana. It was a muggy night, the heat of the day lingering until almost midnight, despite it being fall, almost Halloween. The deputy didn't look like he was none too happy. He took off his hat and wiped sweat from his brow with his shirt sleeve and said, "I guess I got to haul you in, son." He said he didn't want to do it, but it was his duty. I thought, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. Who's to know? He took me to the Forest County Jail in Hub City. Inside, I was taken to a little check-in window. The cop in the window wore sergeant stripes on his sleeve. "Name?" he asked. "Willie Ray Rivers." "Would that be short for William Raymond?" "No, sir, just Willie Ray. That's the whole name my mama gave me." Date of birth, June 12th, 1958. Address, 1429 South Church Street, Ellisville. I was stripped of my wallet and change, the Boulevard watch mama gave me for my last birthday, and my leather belt. A guard marched me down a semi-dark corridor with bars on either side. He was carrying a large white plastic bag. I barely noticed the almost silhouetted figures of men behind the bars. They stared in silence. I guess it's only in the movies that jailbirds shout taunts at new arrivals. The guard stopped and opened a cell and said, "This here's your new home, fella." He gave me a little shove in the back to make me step in. There were 3 men in the cell, one sitting on the top bunk on my left and 2 more on the other bunk on my right. I looked back to see the guard step in behind me and close but not lock the bars. Across the corridor, I glimpsed what looked to be 5 men in another cell. They were all black, which I couldn't tell in that first look, but learned the next morning when there was some more light. The cells were racially segregated, which I thought was coincidental. "Oh no," one of my cellmates corrected me. "They do that on purpose. Can't let them jigaboos in the same cells with white men." There was no furniture in my cell other than the 2 bunk beds, metal springs for slats, and 2-inch thick mattress. A brown wool blanket on each, no sheet. The cellmate perched on the edge of the top bunk with his legs hanging off was rhythmically scissoring the air with his bare feet in time to music he was humming. I recognized the song. It was George Harrison's "My Sweet Lord." His feet were pink, his toes were gigantic. He was shirtless, and wavy blonde hair hung over his shoulders. On top of the other bunk sat a huge guy with curly red hair and a chest and gut that looked like boulders. The third guy was a scrawny little man who looked like a possum. They watched as the guard directed me to take off my clothes and hand them to him. I stripped down to my underwear. "Everything," he demanded. I took off my underwear, embarrassed to be naked in front of these other men, which was really weird because as a high school athlete, I had been naked in locker rooms in front of all of my teammates in football and basketball and baseball. I don't think I was consciously aware of their expressions or even their general appearance in those first few moments. But in retrospect, I saw my foot-swinging cellmate as watching impassively and one of the others eyeballing me with what I took to be a wary expression. There was a toilet standing right there in the open. We'd have to do our business in front of the other men. A toilet with no sink or shower, no way to wash up or brush teeth. The guard explained, washrooms down the hall. You get 10 minutes after supper and 10 minutes after breakfast. Showers are Wednesday and Friday. The guard pulled a pair of neatly folded pajamas from the bag, same dull gray as the ones the other jailbirds were wearing, and set them on the bottom bunk near the swinging feet of the other guy, who looked as happy and contented as the other one looked disgruntled. The guard pulled a rubber glove and a jar of Vaseline from the bag. My sphincter tightened. I knew what was coming. Turn around, bend over, and spread your legs. I don't understand, I said. He was not a doctor. I shouldn't be getting medical exam. The guard repeated, turn around, bend over, and spread them. The cellmate from his top bunk, with a surprisingly calm and mellow tone of voice, said, he's searching for contraband. Jailbirds sneak stuff in that way. Try to relax, it will be easier. Why would I be trying to smuggle something in when I didn't even know I was going to jail? The guard didn't say anything. I couldn't avoid flinching. That was Butch, the top bunk guy said after the guard left, and while I was putting on the pajamas he had left for me. He does it to everybody. I'm not given to calling guys beautiful, but my cellmate was stunningly beautiful. Welcome to Shangri-La, he said. He sounded like a country crooner. I said, hi. He hopped down, said, top bunk or bottom? Top or bottom, new guy gets to choose. I panicked for a moment because I had heard what top and bottom meant in certain cultures.
Oh, he froze.
Alec froze. Give it a second. Let's see.
Well, I like being on top. I was still not comfortable with that. He said, my name is Dream Wilson. With a name like that, his parents must have been hippies. Maybe he had grown up someplace where they meditated day and night. And it really worked. I had never seen anyone so composed and serene in what must have been as terrible a predicament for him as it was for me, locked behind bars awaiting trial. The skinny guy sat up and said, what's your name, kid? I told him I was called Willie Ray. He said, I'm Bobo, but people call me Speedo. My real name is Nancy Thornton, but if anybody calls me Nancy, they just might get a shiv in their gut. What do you do to land your ass in here? I got caught with some weed in my glove compartment. Shit, kid, that's too bad. They don't take too kindly to druggies. Of course, that depends on what judge you get. The big guy on the other upper bunk still didn't say anything, but eventually Dream talked.
Like McConnell.
Maybe if we all mute, then it will be less bandwidth for him or something.
I think it only
Dream
is. Oh, there
told
it
me
is.
he called him Lenny because he made him think of the big guy in Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. Lenny never said much, but he smiled a lot. Across the way, I could see there were 2 bunk beds. There were 5 men sharing that cell, the 5th guy sleeping on a mattress on the floor. It seemed odd. I didn't notice until the next day, but there was an empty cell right next to them. He could have been
Mm.
Oh, it's freezing up.
As they had done their required duty by introducing themselves, Dream and Bobo immediately settled in for the night and closed their eyes. During all this getting acquainted talk, the big guy on the bunk above Bobo's remained silent. Pretty soon the lights all went out, and at about the same time I heard one of them snoring. Eventually I ascertained it was the big guy, Lenny. In the dark, I listened to sounds I could identify and sounds I could not. Steps from heavy boots, toilets flushing, a clanging metallic sound, the drip, drip, drip of water from somewhere, wheezing, coughing. I wondered how many cells there were, how many jailed men. Were there women? Were the women on a different floor or in a separate facility? Would we all eat together in the mess hall or off trays set on our laps in our cells? I had never felt so alone. So that's a little selection from close to the beginning of the book. What happens after that is Willie Ray gets off. The judge takes a liking to him and asks him questions about, do you know this person and that person? Because it was a small town. And he let him off without any explanation, basically, which really surprised him because the person that came before the judge right before him had gotten, I think, 10 years in prison for the exact same offense. But he was a black man.
Uh-huh.
So Willie Ray was let off. And soon after that, he left Mississippi, went to California, San Francisco, where he met and fell in love with Ella, who became his wife. And then, not long after that, his father died, so he and Ella went back home to Mississippi, back to Willie Ray's home. I'm sorry, I said his father died. His father had a stroke, and he went back to help take care of him and run his store, a hardware store. And then later, Ella and Willie Ray started a small weekly newspaper called The Tattler. And they became involved with a city councilman who was also a member of the Ku Klux Klan, who was corrupt, thoroughly corrupt, and obviously a severe racist. And on the southern edge of the town, there was a little community called Palmer's Crossing. The town's name was actually patterned after Hattiesburg, Mississippi, where I grew up. And Palmer's Crossing was a totally all Black community within the edge of Hattiesburg. And this corrupt city council member tried to destroy the community of Palmer's Crossing. And Willie Ray investigated and exposed his corruption and what he was trying to do. So that's the basic plot of the story. Also, the term locked in is an actual condition where the victim is totally paralyzed head to toe and cannot speak. So Willie Ray narrates this story, but his narration is not verbal and it's not written. It's just his thoughts and his memories. So you, the reader, are reading his thoughts and memories. So I'll stop with that.
Oh, it's a freeze again. Unfreeze. Oh, come on.
They froze and they're no picture, right?
Huh,
to tell you,
there he is.
There he is.
but that's why maybe that won't affect, this won't go bad because I turned that one off.
Okay, I'm curious, who has read the book in part or all of it, and who hasn't?
Melvin.
Aaron has read the whole book.
76%.
I've started, Alec. I'm still on it.
Okay, who would like to comment or have questions?
Alec, I fell in love with what I have to say about Willie Ray's voice is how honest it is. It's not embellished, it's not over articulated. It just feels so, he was a very trustworthy voice, which I really needed. Of course, I fell in love with Dream. Who doesn't? Oh my God, I want a sequel about Dream. But no, I loved Dream, and I was very happy that Willie Ray had Ella in his life as a really a touchstone and as the steady engine keeping him going, not just locked in, but before that. So and you know what I didn't realize till today, Willie Ray's only a year older than me. I was born in 59. And I grew up in Berkeley, California, so I know Haight-Ashbury. I knew that whole scene. So, and my mom was from East Tennessee, so I have a connection to the South-ish. So, that was really special to read about that. And then to find out what an activist he became, you know, what a difference he made in so many lives. That was really very moving. We got to hear from his thoughts locked in of how active he was in his life in the Tattler, but what he does politically with no spoiler alerts, but he's an amazing man. So thank you for him.
Yeah, I didn't say that after Willie Ray goes back to Mississippi, he connects with Dream again and they become best of friends throughout the rest of the book.
Yeah.
And everybody that's talked about the book to me says they love Dream.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I fell in love with Dream too, but what I told Alec is I want him to write a sequel, but I want him to write one where Dream hangs out with Red Warner, who is in 3 or 4 of Alec's other novels, who I also fell in love with.
Oh,
And they should get together and have a whole adventure, because that would be interesting.
Well, that would be hard to do because Red Warner died before this one is set.
Yeah, but they're both alive at the same time earlier. You can go back.
Yeah, one of
We
the
could
few
forgive you,
people that
Alec.
oh, I'm sorry, I was interrupting somebody who was speaking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one of the people that reviewed the book said, and I agree, that Ella was the real hero of the story. She didn't have as big a part as Dream or Willie Ray, but she was definitely the kind of the glue that held everyone together. And was a fascinating woman.
Yeah. What I was very impressed with, Alec, is how you went from prisons to racism to hippies in San Francisco to the Old South to battered women to this incredible diversity of things all in one volume. I've often wondered how a novelist's brain could conceive and put that all together. I was very impressed by that.
Well, I'm glad you were. I don't think I have an answer for that. And I will get it.
I didn't expect you to.
And we can talk about Alec's other books or other things.
And I think Kathleen might be muted. It was trying to say something.
No, it's okay, but as long as you mention my name, I'll say something.
Okay.
I'm kind of curious. It's not specifically about this book, but it's about your writing and your characters. What do you feel once you've written the book and it's completed? what do you feel you learn about your characters after the fact, once the book is done? Because there's a way in which it seems like, you know, if you write a book, your characters are not done. The book is done.
Yeah, a lot of people, you know, basically I kind of forget about them after I'm done. And then I start writing other books and invent other characters. But then a lot of people want to know, you know, what happened to this character or that character after the story. And they want to hear, I keep asking for sequels. So I have resurrected some of the characters and included them in other books. And when I do that, I often have to research my own novels because I don't remember things about them. I often forget my characters. I remember once I got an email for somebody and wanted to know, was Lance in Imprudent Zeal based on you? And I didn't know who Lance was. I had to get the book and look him up, and he was the main character, and he was not based on me.
Red Warner wound up in several of Alec's novels because I wanted him to continue, and then other people did too. So Alec wrote the first book of the trilogy, which is
Backside of Nowhere.
And that was a book where people kept saying, well, what happened next? We want to know more. And Alec wasn't planning on writing another book about those people, but he gave in to his fans and wrote a number 2 and then a number 3. And
That's
So it
generous.
sounds like the answer to Kathleen's question is the characters live on in the readers.
Yeah. And I thought about the play. Oh, heck, my mind just blank. I can't think of the name of it. Oh, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Oh, yeah.
Are
That
dead.
play, the main characters, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, had been very minor characters
Right.
in Hamlet by William Shakespeare. And who was the guy that wrote Rosencrantz and Guildenstern? I'm 80 years old. My mind goes blank.
Mine.
But anyhow, he took those very minor characters from a Shakespeare play and made them the main character in another play. And that's what I tried to do with some of my characters that people had asked me that said they wanted a sequel. So it's like the backside of no. Tom Stoppard, right? Thank you. Should have known. But anyway, in the first book in that trilogy, The Backside of Nowhere, there was a scene where these 2 juvenile delinquents were looting stores during a flood. And they were, I guess, 2 pages in the book. And, you know, then they disappeared. Nobody ever saw them again. But then I made them the 2 main characters in the next book in the trilogy.
Alec, I'm curious about thought processes. And did you conceive of the novel first and then decide about the locked-in character, or was the locked-in character the impetus for the novel? Did he freeze? Did I
Frozen.
go
He's thinking. No, he froze.
Yeah, he froze.
Oh,
you're frozen.
There.
He just unfroze. The question was finished and nothing.
Okay, I don't know if you heard what I said.
Oh.
Nothing. Yeah.
The locked-in character was the impetus for the novel. I just decided I wanted to have a character that couldn't speak and couldn't move and figure out how to handle that. That would be a challenge to me. And I kept trying different things. Sometimes I had other people speaking for him, and then finally decided, no, I'm not going to have anybody speaking for him. And there was a very famous man who had locked-in syndrome and wrote an autobiography by
Right.
having his wife,
Yeah.
The bell.
yeah,
jar.
it's called The Bell Jar, and his wife would
Oh,
point, she had a printed out alphabet, and she would point to
The letters.
letters, and he could move 2 fingers.
Wow.
So she would point to letters, and when she pointed to the right one, he would signal her. And so then she would write that letter down and go to the next one.
oh
They
boy.
wrote the entire book in that matter, one letter at a time.
Wow.
And I
And
thought, well, I can't have them do this. That's too cumbersome, and I don't want it to be like I'm copying them. So
And then when you described what you were going to do to me, I said, that sounds kind of like Dalton Trumbo's Johnny Got His Gun.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Right.
pretty similar in one respect, but
Mhm.
not
So
as, not as
eventually I
scary.
decided that I can't have him actually narrating it. I just have him thinking it. And you're reading his thoughts. So the reader is in his head, which I don't think anybody has ever done.
Yeah. Gabby, I don't understand what you just said. You said have him do to me, to you, Gabby?
Um,
I'm
No.
sorry, I didn't hear everything you asked.
I'm asking Gabby what she said. What did that pertain to?
I said that there was another book called Johnny Got His Gun
Oh, so.
by Dalton Trumbo, and the description Alec told me what he was going to do with this book reminded me of that book, but that was an anti-war
Mhm.
that
Mm.
was then made into a movie, but it was about a man who was a veteran in a hospital bed who had no voice, no sight, no arms, no legs, basically a brain and the stump of a body that they were keeping alive. And it was his thoughts. And it was terrifying and a very anti-war, powerful book. But that reminded me when Alec described that.
Yeah.
The rate, what causes locked in, nobody really knows
Mhm.
completely, but it seems to have been caused by having a stroke, one after effect of a stroke. But it's very rare, and very few doctors have been able to research it, and there's no known cure for it. And the one thing I won't tell you is what happens in the end. Does it survive? And if so, how? Got to have something to look forward to when you're reading it.
Yeah, is he imagining telling this? I mean, so many of us, when you have someone for life, I don't know how long he was with this woman before he got locked in, but is he imagining telling it to his partner
Does he
or
what?
to us? Is the book narrated as if he's telling it to his partner just to retell his story?
No, but there is an epilogue that's written, that's told by her.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah. So in the epilogue, she tells a little bit about herself after the main part of the story is finished.
So cool, so cool.
She is an artist.
Alec, I don't know how you did that. I thought it would be cumbersome when I realized the vehicle. Basically, we were in Willie Ray's mind floating around. I mean, our own minds float a lot. It's very chaotic, right? We're jumping, free associating. And I thought, oh, this is going to be hard to follow and track. I'm going to fall off the train a bunch. And I didn't. It flowed really incredibly smoothly. And I don't know if if Gabby helped you kind of editorially finesse that, or did you work hard on that, or did that just come naturally?
Well, she always helps me, and on this one, she didn't help me in that respect. Basically, the way it's written, it is as if he is telling the story, even though he's not. He's just remembering it.
Mm.
And the only thing that she did that helped me make changes in the stories other than grammar and spelling, which she called a lot, was to tell me that some of the sex scenes were too graphic. So I tamed them down a
Well,
little.
You left out a part today because we didn't know who was going to show up, and Alex showed me what he was going to read, and I said, okay, this 4 sentences, you need to pause and not read because we may have children in the room and we may have survivors when he's describing the prison scene and the guard. He left out 4 sentences because I said, you can't do that because we're recording this and we don't know who's going to be there. And he agreed. He said, I thought you were going to say that. It's one thing to read it in the story. It's another thing to be sitting in the room listening to it. And
Right.
That's interesting because it felt to me when you were reading it that something was missing.
Yeah.
So I had my own fantasy, and I guess I was pretty close to it.
Yeah,
Because-
I just left the blank there if you do fill in, but I think
Yeah,
it's pretty easy to fill them in.
He's a mean prison guard. He is
Yeah.
not a good man. And that's what you can imagine we missed, but he
Yeah.
is not.
And I told Alex, the people who come to the reading will either know what you left out without you saying it, or
Right.
they don't need to,
Right.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
for a
that's really
reason.
wise because you're not in the same room as us to notice
Right.
how it affects us, and you don't know who's just
Yeah.
outside of
Who's
our
there?
Yeah.
video. Yeah,
Plus-
I like
plus
that you
we're
said that you
recording it.
knew that.
Yeah,
By the way, that guard does show up again later in the book,
uh-huh.
much
Okay.
later. And I can tell you a little bit more about the plot that without giving anything away. Willie Ray and his wife end up
Okay, just a minute.
a newspaper, as I said, and they publish it out of their own home. And they're living in this big house, and they end up taking people in that need a place to stay. Yeah, the first one is this guy from France who can barely speak English, and he's a big, strong guy, and he claims that in his youth he was a model for Pablo Picasso, and that he knew all of these famous artists from the late 19th and early 20th century. And it turns out that they can't really figure it out if he's lying about that.
Mhm.
He really was Picasso's model.
Mm.
And he seems to know a lot about him. But he's a big, strong man. And when they bring Willie Ray home from the hospital after he has this big stroke, this guy picks him up and carries him up a steep set of stairs all by himself, and always picks him up to put him into the bathtub or anything like that that's needed, because Ella's not strong enough to do that. And then they have a woman who's a victim of spouse abuse that calls. Somehow she had gotten his name and phone number and was told that they took in people that needed help. And she calls him and said that her husband had beaten her up and he was chasing her, and she was hiding in this little grocery store and country grocery store. So he goes to the grocery store and picks her up, and her husband shows up and they take off and their husband chases them and they have a high-speed chase. And he finally gets away with her and they bring her home with them and she ends up living with them throughout the rest of the story. And there are 2 or 3 others like that take place.
And that part is actually based on what Alec and I were doing in Mississippi when we were publishing a weekly newspaper. We were also running an emergency shelter out of our home that wound up mostly battered women and their children. And one time Alec went to pick up a woman who called us and had a high-speed chase with a husband. And luckily he didn't see Alec get on the freeway and he lost him.
Yeah, I just made a turn that they didn't see and, he didn't see, and so he couldn't catch me. In the novel, it's much more complex than that, how he gets away.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I imagine in the novel, because it's such a small town, everybody who saw has to say, I don't know who that man was, and just deny that he will ever find his wife. Like, you'd have to keep that secret on purpose because that man should not find his wife.
Yeah, the town where he grew up, Ellisville, is an actual town, and it's a tiny little country town, and it's near the biggest nearby town is Hattiesburg, which is at the time where I grew up was about 40,000 people. So it was a small town, but not tiny. And that's where they went to open up their newspaper.
Well, I was going to ask you, Alec, before Gabby said, I knew that you guys had done a newspaper in Mississippi, how your own lives might be reflected in the book or whatever, but are there other things, other details that or true things from your times in Mississippi or other?
Yeah, there are things from my time in Mississippi, and also I did some research, like the community of Palmer's Crossing, the all-Black community, which is a small town within a bigger town, is an actual place, and it was during the 1960s was the center of civil rights action in the southern Mississippi. That's where they had voter registration drives and freedom schools, and there's a lot about that in the book that I researched some online, and I also joined a group of people from Hattiesburg, an online Facebook group, and talked to a bunch of people who lived there, and they told me a lot about the history.
Well, Alec also, after graduate school, became a teacher and was part of the United States Teacher Corps and was one of the white teachers that integrated the Black schools for 1 year.
Yeah.
And he was teaching art in Black schools in Hattiesburg, all the way from elementary school through high school.
No, it was all elementary school.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't there. I was still in elementary.
The Teacher Corps was a really cool program. It was a federal program. It was all over the country, although most people don't know about it, where they took college graduates and sent them to graduate school and for special classes on how to work in poverty areas. In Hattiesburg, the schools were under court order to integrate. They were all still segregated at the time, but they were under court order to integrate. So the Teacher Corps, the people that participated were pretty much 50-50 Black and white. So they assigned all the Black teachers to white schools and all the white teachers to Black schools. That's how they managed to integrate the schools. And I loved it. It was a great thing. They also paid for graduate school, which was nice. Although I was an art major and they didn't have offer a graduate degree in the college, local college. So since they didn't offer a graduate degree, they just gave me a studio and let me go in there and paint and draw by myself. And one of the teachers who had actually gone to undergraduate, had been my friend in undergraduate school, would come in once a week and talk to me about what I was doing. And that was my graduate school. So I didn't actually get a graduate degree there. I went somewhere else for that. Oh, very interesting thing. I mentioned this Facebook group called Good Times Remembered in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And there were a whole bunch of people who lived there at different times that were in this group. So once, 2 or 3 years ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I posted a thing in there saying, who remembers the big flood in Hattiesburg in 1961? And I talked about how I was in the Navy Reserve, and they sent us to rescue people who were trapped in their houses during the flood. And most of the worst flooding was in all Black communities, predominantly Black communities. And I said something about, about that. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. And just this week, somebody commented on it, and the comments showed up. And it was a big rant about why I was claiming saying that it was all Black people that were damaged, and only Black people's houses were hurt, and I was a vicious racist.
It's Mississippi.
Yeah. So I found that on my Facebook page a couple of days ago.
Alec, wait, is that because they had read your book?
I'm
No.
sorry, did what?
It's not because they read the book.
Is that because they read the book?
No, they didn't even, I don't think they even knew about the book. It was just they read that post in that group on Facebook.
And so it goes on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You leaving, Brianna? Or
Yeah.
just waving?
Got something at the top of the hour. I just wrote, of course, the places that were more affordable because whites didn't want to live in flood areas. I
Right.
mean, of
Mhm.
course. And I'm sorry that that person misinterpreted what you said to be 100% and absolute, like they're thinking, obviously. And that's the lens they're wearing.
Good to see you.
I'm so sorry that's still going on, not just for your feelings, but for the way more important impacts,
Yeah.
like those year differences in people's imprisonment. Yeah. Thanks for writing about such important topics and bringing it together in such an engaging. I was like, wow, I'm there. So thank you. I gotta go.
He's got other books that deal with it too.
Yeah. That kind of thing shows up a lot in my books because I grew up there in it. During the height of the civil rights movement. I wanted to show, some of you haven't seen, but this is the cover of Locked In.
Yeah,
And
looks.
this is my previous book that came out right before that one,
Teacher.
which is set in Olympia. And this is one of our latest books, the Mudflat Shorts, which is a collection of short stories by, I think, 19 different writers. And the only other new book, newest one, is by Charlie Berger, and we don't have a copy of it to show you.
But Charlie and Aaron can talk about it.
They have a copy.
There it is.
There's information about it on the Mudflat Press website, but Charlie and Aaron, why don't you
Yeah.
talk about that? Because you're doing the next one of these lit chats in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
But wait, before Charlie talks, before we segue, Alec, question. Since a lot of your books have themes, of course, from your own life in them, and being inspired by a memoir writer right here, are you going to write a real memoir of your life with a lot of these stories? Or are you going to just keep weaving them into novels?
Gabby and I have talked about doing a joint memoir for years, but I don't know if we'll ever get around to it.
In our spare time. A Mississippi boy marries daughter of a communist from New York, and
Yeah, it's a very amazing story. It is.
we'll probably do it. We've kind of dabbled with pieces of it here and there, but and maybe before we get you guys to talk about your book, I wanted Alec to say something about the two projects that he's sort of working on now.
Mm.
The book that you just sort of finished, and the
Oh,
book
yeah.
and the other one is the book that we're getting ready to publish.
Okay.
In October.
Yeah, it took about 2 years after I finished Locked In before we actually published it, because Gabby had to edit it, and she was so busy with other things she couldn't get around to it, but she finally did.
Yep.
So while she was working on other things, I wrote a new novel, which I finished it
last week,
and now we got to wait when she gets a chance to edit it.
It won't take that long.
Yeah. But it is called The Descendants of the Pirate Pigleg Josiah Johnson. Just the craziest title I've ever come up with.
Yeah.
The title is intriguing enough, makes me want to pick it up.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you, Alec. I'd like to know when you sleep, or if you do, because you seem to be so ridiculously prolific. I don't get how I mean, some of these books are written in a couple of months, it seems like. I mean, maybe that's not true, but that's what it feels like, because you're always finishing one and writing another every time we talk.
Yeah, well, the one the Pigleg Johnson is I don't have any ideas for another one. Maybe I'll take some time off. But,
memoir time.
But I'm also the editor of Only Arts, and that's working on it a lot. And I'm not as busy as it seems.
Well, that's good.
3 times. I watch all the Seahawks games on the weekends. And
that's true. Yeah.
Take naps. So, but what the Descendants of the Pirate Pigleg Josiah Johnson. And what it's about is the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of this pirate, all settled in Western Washington. Some of them live here in Olympia, some of them are in Seattle and other areas, and some in Eastern Washington. But every year, they have a family retreat on Orcas Island. And they all get together. And, we have these family members who love each other and hate each other and fight and have fun. And it's, a big, booming, sprawling novel. I think it's the biggest one I've ever written. And I think it's the funniest one I've ever written, although there's some very serious things in it too. So that's one project that I just finished, and I'm waiting for, Gabby's going to have to edit it, and then we'll try to publish it. And the other thing we're working on now is a companion piece to Mudflat Shorts, the collection of short stories. And this one is going to be a collection of poetry. And we have, I think, a dozen, maybe a little more than a dozen poets who have submitted work to it, including Gabby and Kathleen, who are on this chat. And we're well underway, and we expect to be able to finish it and get it published sometime towards the end of this month or next month.
or early next month. I'm calling it a sister companion piece to the short story volume that we did.
Yeah, we're even gonna have the same color, same cover, but with different names. And instead of being Mudflat Shorts, it's gonna be Mudflat Verse.
Nice.
And then a list of all the poets here. Maybe a different color, but probably the same
Probably
cover.
not. The writers are really kind of exciting because it's everybody from people like me and Kathleen that I don't consider myself a poet. My mother thought I was going to be the next great poet of America. And that was one of the ways that I got approval as a kid. And then in high school, I figured out that I really didn't want to be approved of that way. And I quit writing at some point in my teen years, and only have written one poem since then. And that one will be in the book. And I went back and read because my mother saved all this stuff and my sister gave it to me after my mom died. And I will not publish that unless I do it as a joke. So it's not going to be in the book. It was awful stuff. I was not the next great poet of America. Just leave it at that. Sappy teenage and little kid stuff that doesn't deserve to be seen again. But everything from people who really are not, poets and have not done a lot of work as poets, all the way to people who have amazing histories as published poets who are pretty well known and that are it's an exciting mixture of people. So, and all of it is worth having in the book, and it's all very different. So it's kind of exciting to see it pull together. People have asked us what the theme of it is, and somebody made the assumption that it was sense of place, and we're like, it may be in some ways, but really it's just different voices and different, a diversity of people using sort of the same format, although all the poetry ranges from rhyming poetry and very traditional form all the way to kind of spoken word and almost rap. So anyway, that'll come out at the end of this month or early November.
It's a poetry potpourri.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if we do another one, we'll call it Poetry Potpourri.
There you go.
Good title.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on that before we get Charlie and Aaron to talk about their book? And hopefully you guys will want to come to that too.
Yeah, you guys are welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
I will say before that I need to leave shortly because I've got a meeting down at Traditions. But the eldest daughter of one of my friends from Earlham, when I taught there years ago, is going to be presenting something on Ukraine. This is a person I haven't seen in 50 years. So
Interesting.
joy.
I will bug out shortly, but I'd like to hear what Charlie has to say.
Well, let me just start by saying that I'm in my 80s and I have never written anything except for the genital tumors of dogs. I decided to write this book. I've lectured extensively in the latter half of my life, and lecturing is sort of storytelling that's organized. And here comes COVID, and I have a pretty bad case of ADHD. So what am I going to do? I tell stories. So I decided that maybe my life might be interesting enough to tell in a story. And I managed in 2 years to get over 400 pages of memoirs. And basically the book starts off with where I was raised in the bowels of Brooklyn, rather poor, and my groups of friends, and how I managed and needed to get out of that environment. And the book goes through many things, my escaping the Vietnam War, my setting up a veterinary clinic, my working with wolves, my outdoor Arctic adventures and African times, my working with exotic animals and wild animals. And I decided to put it together with the help of Erin, this book called Born to Go, because all my life I suffered from a marvelous Yiddish word called spilkes, which literally means ants in your pants. It's affected me my entire life. And basically the book is, in a way, a lot about my travels, my adventures, literally all over the world. And the last many years lecturing for Viking cruises, which takes Erin and I basically all over the world and treats us very, very well. And 8 flavors of gelato, all you can eat. I mean, who could have refused the gig? So it's a very good gig for my old age. But I think the heart of the book is basically how I grew up in Brooklyn and what it was like in the 40s and the 50s, and how kids lived at that time as opposed to the way we live now. And I hope that those of you who read it will enjoy it.
We did. And we were thrilled to be able to bring it with your.
You guys were great.
You guys were great, because without Gabby and Alec being opinionated, helping us with the formatting so we could upload it to Amazon Kindle publishing, yeah, I don't know how much it would have happened. They made it, and you guys, Abby and Gallic, you guys feel like family. You have that way about you, which it was really, really, really dear.
Yeah.
So there wasn't stress. There wasn't stress about
And
it. It was
especially
great.
since grammar is not my strong point, because public school was not, and I never learned to diagram sentences and commas and semicolons and colons. I just write. I don't the paragraphs and the commas.
Gabby truly edit his
Right,
writing. That's what we should have never do with ours. But
Book is also full of lots and lots of photographs
That's
Oh,
right.
that's
all over
true.
the world with a lot of animals and people.
Right. Yeah.
that's true.
Gabby and Alec have been singing your praises because I'm an outdoor animal person.
Are you?
Is my major vocation. I'm a clinical
great. Well,
psychologist, but I really like critters.
I kept wolves for many years and was very active in wolf work for a good many years.
Wait, Kathleen,
Yes,
as a avocation or just as a passion?
it is a passion. I'm a clinical psychologist by profession, but I'm a biology minor, and I'm a birder and an outdoor person. You know, trekking, backpacking, and Tibet and Nepal and places like that. Exotic animals.
I've done that. We have done that. Yeah.
Kathleen, I've been a psychotherapist for 35 years, but I am a naturalist, photographer. So we're very parallel that way.
Yeah.
It sounds great. I've been doing psychology for 15 years.
Gotta go, friends.
Crazy.
Okay,
Thanks,
glad you
Alec.
took-
Jacob, call me later
Okay.
about something else.
Okay.
So I guess on what day? The 15th or something?
Oh yeah. So when is our lit chat? Is
Yours is the 15th.
On the,
Sunday.
yeah,
Thank you, Kathleen.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
at 3 o'clock, and I'm gonna turn off record and we can just visit.
Okay,
Hang on
it's
just a
next week.
second.
I'm gonna go see the daughter of my friend.
Okay.
Donna.
Find out about
Okay.
it.
Bye,
Bye.
Kathleen.
Thank you.
We're
Thanks,
recording.
Al. Thanks, Gabby.
Okay,
And Aaron. Bye-bye.
Okay, goodbye, Kathleen.
see you later.
Thank you.
Alec, the reading was great.
Yeah.
Well,
People
thank you.
loved your reading. And a couple times you froze up, but I told everybody just hang on, he'll be back. And sure enough, there you were again.
That's
So-
Southern